So, hi everyone. Please help me to welcome Salone. She is the founding and general partner at Lumikai. And Lumikai is actually first dedicated gaming and interactive media VC fund, and where she's backing next generation of content platform and technology startups, gaming startups from India. And I think she has led over 200 million in gaming transaction across geographies. She brings a rare combination of strategic insight, creative vision, and deep ecosystem knowledge. With this, I welcome Saloni. Saloni, thanks for being on our podcast. And I was just going through your profile, and it's so interesting. And you have traveled the complete life cycle of a I would say a leader, from a banker to analyst to entrepreneur yourself. You have run a gaming startup yourself, to creating a VC ecosystem, and now founding a dedicated media and gaming fund in India. So thanks for coming in, and please explain in terms of how this journey has been and how you have started, what's been your early life in terms of this journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alok, for having me. Um, yeah, it's I guess I've been in the industry for now 2 decades. I grew up in India, but a majority of my time I spent it in Europe. So I kind of have seen the industry, at least interactive media, gaming, from all sides of the table. As you mentioned, I've been on the VC side, I've been an entrepreneur, but I also started my career in investment banking and private equity. But I very much grew up in India. And in India, I grew up playing games, and I used to love fantasy fiction, whether it was in games or books or television. But at the same time, I also grew up in a family of very practical people. So I actually grew up in a family of stockbrokers, with both my parents being involved in the financial markets. My mother was India's first female technical stock analyst, and she was actually awarded the Mahila Shiromani Award from the First Lady of India. And back in the day, my parents were one of the few publicly listed brokerage firms in the 1990s. So, जैसे वो finance DNA में होता है, so that finance at least became a career
Right,
of choice.
right,
Um, and that's for me, finance was a very logical choice of getting and starting. So, did college from DU, did economics, ended up joining finance. But after the first 6 7 years of finance, I was in investment banking, I was in private equity, I used to be at Morgan Stanley, Barclays, ended up seeing about $10 billion in M&A deals. I used to cover broader tech, media, retail, etc., and as part of the my banking journey. But I was burnt out, and
hmm,
realized that I wanted to do more than just be a cog in a very large machine. But I was always an accidental entrepreneur. I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur myself. I'd seen my parents' journey of being an entrepreneur, and it was so hard. Uh,
right,
so then it didn't feel like, oh, I that's the natural evolution for me, but it so happened. And it ended up happening in an industry that I was very passionate about,
got,
which happened to be gaming.
hmm,
And that's the journey led me to becoming an entrepreneur. I became CEO and co-founder of a business called Truly Social. It was an immersive mobile gaming company out of UK, which blended my passion, I think, for storytelling, for gaming, interactive media. I then ended up joining the investors who were my lead investors in the company,
right, right.
which was a fund called London Venture Partners. I was a principal at that fund. And, after some time, I started to see a lot of deals come from India,
Hmm,
actually. And that germinated an idea ki, India felt like it was the right time. It was 2019, 2020. Geo had just happened. Smartphones were very cheap in India. We just started to see gaming media explosion in terms of adoption.
right.
And hence, I decided to take the plunge and come back to India after being in Europe for almost 12 years, and came back and launched Lumikai, which was back in 2020. So it's now been 5 years of running the fund, and it's been an incredibly, I guess, challenging, enriching, fulfilling journey. As you know, you're also been an entrepreneur for a very long time, as you can imagine. There are always ups and downs, but yeah, that's been the journey so far.
Let's go back to the phase when you felt that you got burnt out and you didn't wanted to do more of 9 to 5 job and you wanted to build something of your own. And there is some similarity between your journey and my journey because we both work in KPMG at some point of time, in sometime 2006 or 2007. But and your parents were also entrepreneurs in the sense that they were independently into financial market. So what triggered in the sense, and it was I think you were lucky that your passion towards gaming industry or your passion towards thrill in that sense also cumulated into uh, doing that as a entrepreneur or as a business, right? So how that journey happened, and how you actually started your own venture, or how you have landed up as a CEO of a very interesting gaming company in, I think that was in London, if I'm correct, in
Yeah,
UK,
that's right. I
right?
was thinking, yeah,
Just
yeah.
if you can just tell us the journey of that phase, because that actually changed your life to my mind.
Yeah, it did. And, investment banking was not 9 to 5, it was a 100-hour week career.
When we say 9 to 5, it means something which is boring.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say investment banking was boring. There was not dull, but it
Ah,
was incredibly strenuous. And at the end of the day, you're kind of creating impact for somebody else.
right.
I think that was the part which
Right,
is more
right.
bothersome,
I
right?
get it. Right. Yeah.
You're spending a lot of time and energy essentially generating value for somebody else, like who's your
Right.
client.
Right.
Uh, I think my entrepreneurial journey actually stemmed out of two things. One was there was a deep desire to build or at least to have impact. Now,
Hmm.
how that impact would be, I didn't have a fully formulated idea at that point of time. But if you look at games, I realized very early on in my life that if I wanted to ever see a Indian female
Right.
lead in a game, I'd have to build it myself. And later on, I realized I'd have to fund it myself also,
Hmm.
right? And I think there was also a broader, I guess, value creation opportunity, which was that there are underrepresented audiences in gaming. And you just talked about it, that you quoted some numbers about 40% of gamers in India are actually women, but
Right.
globally that number is much larger. Even back then, which was in 2013, 60% of casual gamers were women, but less than 20% of apps and games were catered to them specifically. And
Hmm.
there is
Why is
now,
that, Saloni? Why is that? I mean, why? Because this is a surprise to me
yeah,
that we have more women gamers around the world. Why is that?
it's largely because of mobile, actually.
Okay.
If you think of traditionally as gaming, gaming was always on PC and console. So
Hmm.
you always needed very expensive hardware to get into. You needed an
Hmm.
Xbox, you needed a PlayStation to actually get into a gaming experience. When mobile happened, which also was, 2011, 2012, where you had, these Farmville style games which were on Facebook, and then you had games which then came on mobile, it actually removed friction. So a lot
Right.
of women started playing games because it was so easily accessible on your mobile.
Right.
You no longer had to pay for very expensive hardware. You could just play for free, or if you wanted to pay, you had in-app purchases. So gaming went from premium, which was a business model where you had to
Hmm.
pay upfront, to actually what was called free-to-play gaming, and
Right.
that led to an explosion of just a very new demographic playing games. So if you actually look even in India, a lot of women play Ludo,
Hmm.
or older women play solitaire. You'll
Hmm.
have younger women playing Candy Crush or Temple Run or Subway Surfer, right?
Hmm.
अगर आप airport जाओगे या आप you're just waiting somewhere, typically you'll see people doing two things:
Hmm.
either playing games or they're watching video content, even,
Right.
right? So I think that is what a big shift happened. But I think more importantly, agar I think the demographic profile, which is what we call, it's a swipe before type demographic.
Hmm.
We've grown up with the mobile in our hand, at least
Hmm.
not, maybe not well, we got phones,
Hmm.
when I was in college. But
Right.
if you look at the generation below us and the generation further below, they've actually grown up with mobile
Right.
games.
Right.
Their primary medium of entertainment is the mobile phone.
Right.
So
Right.
whether it's video content, whether it's audios, whether it's chat, whether it's games, your entire social hemisphere is actually on your mobile phone.
Right.
And that is in a way very democratized.
Right.
That is not restricted to a particular kind of audience base.
Right.
जैसे everybody sees movies, but we don't say कि आप movie हो.
Hmm.
Everybody plays games, but people
Right.
say कि yeah, you're gamers. But actually, a lot of women don't even identify themselves as gamers.
Now, when you are saying, I kind of relate to it because in flight I see many women actually playing Ludo.
Hmm.
Now I could feel that connection. Uh,
But अगर आप उनसे पूछोगे कि आप गेम ज्यादा खेलते हो और या आप गेमर हो, they'll probably say no.
वो बोलेंगे ऐसे
Because
कर
the
लिया
word
मैं तो ये।
gamer, because the word gamer doesn't identify, they
Right.
don't self-identify as gamers. Then they'll say, कि नहीं, ये, we're doing some time pass, like we're just entertaining ourselves.
And then you touched upon on a point which was very, very interesting in terms of the geo thing which happened in India,
Mm.
right? Pre 2015-16, when data or data penetration was not to a point wherein which was there in when geo came in, I think that actually changed the data consumption in India for life, right? And I think that was an inflection point wherein gaming, online gaming became very much in. And then I think you started your fund in 2019 or 20, and then COVID happened, right?
That's right.
So Geo plus COVID, and with lot of free time, will has that spiked up the gaming adoption at that point of time in 2020, 21?
Absolutely. And I'll add another element to it, UPI,
Ah,
right?
hmm,
So, it's Geo plus COVID plus UPI plus the fact that 50% of India's population is under 25. So,
hmm,
to add all of that together, that is essentially why interactive media, gaming, so video streaming, social streaming, audio streaming, esports, animation, VFX have become such big
hmm,
uh,
hmm,
right? Like the media, the way media has worked has become very different, right? Agar if you look at media entertainment in India, just broadly, right? It's a $25 billion bucket, but
hmm,
half of it is it's television, it's box office, it's live events, it's print, right? Their growth rate is maybe single digits. It's 3 to 6%. It's not growing or it's plateauing. The other half of that $25 billion is actually gaming, it's animation, VFX, it's video, social, streaming, esports. That's a $12 billion market. It's growing at 16% year on year. It's expected to be 30 billion in the next few years. That's the market as a fund that we are interested in.
And if you see a very interesting point which you brought in, and if you see in terms of what's happening in India now, and you said something which is very, very interesting, ki the number one entertainment, the source of entertainment for people is mobile.
Hmm.
Because in India, you do not have lot of, I would say, people don't go in the evening for walk, people don't go and mingle. You go and see any of the first world and you see people after 5:30, 6 o'clock, they just go out. In
Yeah.
India, we still don't see that. At least maybe the young ones or people above 50, 55, they just don't go out. They're at home most of the time. The second is in terms of something has happened which has completely changed in terms of the future of big screen. And there is a serious question mark on the future of big screen. And I feel, Saloni, is that even the screen at our home, the future of that screen is also very, very, I would say, I don't know the future of that screen because family together, I have not seen people together sitting and watching television
It
because
doesn't happen anymore, actually. It
yeah,
doesn't.
and everyone has got their own schedule or own routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
At my home for 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, we don't even switch on our television.
Yeah.
We switch on when there is a sport or when there is a news or something which has happened and we wanted to see what has happened.
Yeah.
And I see that most of the people, while they commute, either within city or at the airport, which you said, and they use their iPad or their laptop
Yeah.
or their mobile.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think,
Actually, that's very true. And if you were to put numbers behind it, gaming today India has 590 million gamers. It contributes about $3.8 billion to this $12 billion entertainment bucket. The box office actually is one third that, with
right,
900 million or 800 million odd cinema footfalls. And actually, cinema footfalls in India over the last year have actually declined.
right.
So fewer and fewer people are actually going to the cinema. And
I have not gone for the last 6 months.
yeah, because everything is on OTT, right?
Hmm.
And when you talk about that family screen, actually, we do consumer surveys, and we launched a research report which was at this Wave Summit in 2 weeks ago in Mumbai.
Hmm.
And actually, one of the biggest findings that we have is that the entertainment has moved from the large family screen to your personalized mobile screen, because everybody has their own choice of personalized entertainment, right? Like
Right.
what you're
Right.
watching is very different from probably what your kids are watching, or what your wife is watching, or what grandparents are watching, right? And but there is that whole experience of everybody coming together and watching the same entertainment, which used to happen when we were growing up, no longer happens,
No.
right? Everybody has their own kind of, and when you have the mobile in your hand, people are spending time on social media, people are spending time on games. It's kind of changed the way entertainment has impacts. It's
Right.
no longer, it's become increasingly personalized, it's
Hmm.
increasingly interactive, it's increasingly immersive, versus linear
Hmm.
and common, right? Like, which was a common experience.
Right, right. Now, moving forward, what are the challenges you see in Indian gaming industry, right? I don't think government has helped with the GST, with the TDS, and what are the challenges which we have. So, to your mind, what is the future in terms of all these issues, and where do you see that we will end up? Because somewhere with what has happened, especially for GST. So I know three major challenges and which I really feel about the gaming industry. Number one is the GST and the complete non-clarity and I would say non-interest in terms of how the government is looking at gaming industry from a GST perspective. Number two is TDS, and number three, every state has got its own rules and regulation. What is skill based, what is non-skill based, and there is no central authority which is actually kind of controlling or regulating the gaming industry. So in that scenario, and since you have so many LPs coming in, you have so many startups, और बहुत बार क्या होता है कि you see a startup coming up, becoming big, and then you suddenly see a regulation coming and it's kind of destroying. So what's your view on these regulations?
Yeah, so from our perspective, one is we're not just a gaming fund. We
Hmm.
invest in broader interactive media entertainment,
Right.
right? So we do content, we'll do gaming companies, gaming studios, but we do platforms, we do social entertainment, live streaming platforms, we do audio platforms, we do AR, VR, mixed reality companies. We also do B2B SaaS companies, which are using AI and machine learning. We also back companies which are using game mechanics to disrupt, let's say, edtech or health tech, for example. So our gamut is to kind of find category leaders in the $12 billion bucket. Now,
Right.
with respect to gaming, there are two sections of it. One is the real money gaming side, which is impacted by the regulations
That's
that
the
you have
GST
mentioned.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's about 2 billion out of the $12 billion bucket.
Hmm.
But the rest of the other 10 billion is essentially monetized via in-app purchases or
Hmm.
virtual gifting or subscription
Hmm.
revenue, which has largely been unimpacted by this
Hmm.
regulation,
Hmm.
right? So for us, there is more ample clarity around essentially the business models
Right.
around let's say in-app purchases, gift virtual, and we see many of our companies using many of these business models to monetize, right? uh, we were at the Wave Summit, and Lumikai as a fund was the only VC fund which was
Hmm.
part of the subcommittee at Waves. And it was very reassuring to hear that from a government perspective, and Prime Minister Modi spent a significant amount of time at Waves. He was there for 9 hours, almost like for the full day. And a large part of his discussion at the inauguration ceremony was about using Indian storytelling,
Hmm.
Indian new media, animation, VFX, original IP, the creator economy to export Indian culture to the global markets.
Right.
And
Right.
these are actually now national priorities, right? They
Right.
also launched the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, which is on the lines of the IIT, but for creative industries, where
Hmm.
it will be about video game development, it's about animation, VFX, etc. It's in collaboration with big tech like Nvidia, like Meta, like Google, Microsoft, and Adobe, who are coming together to set up this institute, and it's going to be in Mumbai.
Hmm.
So I think the nature of media has changed.
Right.
There's a lot more focus on, hey, what is what does it mean to export culture? Because it's not
Hmm.
just about real money gaming or skill based gaming. It is actually about how do we take storytelling to the next level, right? So if one was to think about it, we've seen this example of how filmmaking has transcended to the global markets, right? Like RRR or Bahubali, which have been directed by SS Rajamouli, have become global titles, right? Indian culture has become global. Now, what are the other mediums with which this can happen? And there is a complete recognition of fact that new media and interactive media is a way
Hmm.
that Indian culture can be exported. So there is a lot of things which are happening, which are very, very good also for the ecosystem at the same time. And of course, the taxation regulation impacts one aspect of the interactive media industry.
Right. No, I was seeing one very interesting uh, video graphics and storytelling on Hanumanji, and it was done in Japan,
Hmm.
and it was very, very interesting. If I find it, I will send it to you. So I
Sure.
completely agree that in terms of our heritage and our rich culture which we have, and uh, there's a lot of storytelling, and we have been very good as a country in terms of storytelling, not from now, but from the last 3, 4, 500 years, right? From Satyajit Ray to
Sure.
till now. And I think with and you know, you said something which is very interesting in terms of each one of us has this power to tell our stories, right? And with this media, because now we do not need huge budget, we don't need
Yeah.
big screen, we don't need large producers. You see influencers, and you see content creators, and you see people who are able to create their stories and able to send the stories and export. I
Yeah,
think
that's yeah.
yeah, that's a very big thing, and I think that. But tell me, uh, I mean, what India needs to do, and I think I know that India is on the right path in terms of what we want to do, the kind of movies which we make now, in terms of the visual effects, the technology. But where do you see India gaming industry on a global landscape, and where do you see India leading that gaming industry, maybe in next 5, 7 years?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
So, we again, I'll circle back to, why we launched the fund, right?
Hmm.
At Lumikai, there, if you look at the global markets, right, there is a complete change in the way the future of media is, right, at the
Hmm.
moment, right?
Hmm.
You have interactive media, which is now bigger than box office, it's bigger than TV, it's bigger than music, it's bigger than sports media rights, it's bigger than television media rights, right? When we launched the fund, this market was considered too nascent, too unproven. I think the question that we were grappling with was how do we fund, scale, and to some extent globalize India's creative ambition?
Right.
That's what we do. So it's not just about looking at gaming as one part of the pie. It's like we back founders who are creating, let's say, category defining experiences across gaming, across
Hmm.
virtual worlds, across AI led creation. It's not just about, just exporting software. It's about taking your content. It's
Right.
about in platforms. How do you take audio storytelling and take it to the global markets? We have a business called Wobble, which is doing audio content and a physical product, hardware product for kids. And they're
Hmm.
targeting the US market and they're building it, the two Indian ladies who are building it out of here. So,
Hmm.
I think as a market, we have immense user depth, but there has been very little capital or conviction behind its creative potential, right?
Hmm.
Also, creative arts were not always the career of choice for a lot of young people, right? Especially in the decade that at least I grew up in, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people felt, it was finance or medicine or engineering. If you now look at what people want to be and do, they're exploring all sorts of career
Right.
options. They want to be a creator, they want to be an influencer, they want to be a YouTuber, they want to be a game developer, they want to be an esports athlete, they want to be a stand-up comedy artist, right? So that kind of breadth of, I guess, or optionality has opened up
Right.
this generation. So that means that it is no longer just about, hey, the very traditional linear paths, It has now become very non-linear, and it is a lot more creatively inclined, right? And also there is capital and money which is being put behind it, right? And especially with this younger generation, um, that is the kind of companies we want to fund, because we believe that the future of media in the next 10 years is going to look very different from media in the last 10 years.
Absolutely. And I think what you are saying is 100% correct. What you have done, and this is very, very commendable in the sense that you have brought in a fund, you have brought in capital, you have brought in experience. Because what you were saying is that many people who have talent in them, but they were always told at home कि यार ये हॉबी है,
Hmm.
पैसा नहीं बनता है, पैसे बनाने के लिए you have to go and do a job,
Hmm.
right? And it be it storytelling, be it content creation, be it anything which is relating to art,
Hmm.
or and this is where if you find and if you help them or enable them or empower them to monetize. So एक तो होता है idea, and this is what I wanted to discuss with you next, कि एक होता है idea कि this is what I want to do. This is very creative. It can be on voice, it can be on video, it can be on storytelling, it can be gaming, it can be media, it can be anything. Usko, how do you help? And at what stage do you actually invest? Do you invest pre-revenue, or do you invest at the ideation stage, wherein you feel कि यार idea तो अच्छा है, but somewhere how this idea will get converted into a monetization or a money-making idea is we have to see, and we have to put our money into that.
Yeah.
So I really want to have your take on this, because in the last 15 years, I've seen so many founders, and I see founders very passionate about their idea. And at many times, it's a hard truth which I have to tell them that your idea is great, but you have to also, because many people don't understand the finance part of the idea.
Yeah.
इंदा कैसे build होगा इससे,
Hmm.
right? So what is your take on that? And that is more in your ecosystem, because you are actually trying to create a lot of things which people want to see, people want to consume, but many people don't want to pay, right? ठीक है, in terms of the content consumption. So what's your take on this? And there is a added question to this which I will ask you later, because when I said about how Indian startups and Indian gaming industry and Indian media tech, new tech companies, how they can actually be the world leaders, I have a different take on that which I will ask you, but I need your take on this first.
Sure. So let me actually address the first point is, Indians don't pay. Uh,
Hmm.
my view is very different. Actually, India has always paid for entertainment.
Hmm.
No matter आपका, you're a tier one household, tier two household, tier three household, because our physical infrastructure is so poor that the only medium of entertainment that we've always had has actually been actually entertainment, right? Like your television or your cinema
Hmm.
experience, right? What the mobile actually did was that it opened up these experiences across the world that you could now consume
Hmm.
sitting at home, but at one third the cost of a movie ticket.
Hmm.
आपका सिनेमा टिकट इज 300 रुपीज, बट आपका इन ऐप परचेज इन अ ऑडियो प्लेटफॉर्म और अ लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग प्लेटफॉर्म कैन स्टार्ट as low as 29 rupees,
Hmm.
right? So the value per price proposition is actually very low. And in
Right.
a market, whether you're an urban household or whether you're a rural household, you can look at the government studies. 1% of the income is actually spent on entertainment,
Hmm.
right? And it is cheaper than going to a restaurant to
Hmm.
entertain yourself, right? So that I believe that the way and monetization is happening is changing. आप अगर सिनेमा नहीं जा रहे हो पर आप घर पे बैठ के गेम्स खेल रहे हो और गेम्स आर बीइंग मोनेटाइज्ड इन ऐप परचेजिंग, या आप अपने फेवरेट क्रिएटर्स को गिफ्ट्स दे रहे हो थ्रू वर्चुअल गिफ्ट्स, और you're listening to audio stories through audio platforms. So that nature of entertainment that you were earlier spending on, that has changed. Now, with respect to, where are founders coming from? Or where are companies being built from? Right now, if you look at, let's say, there are companies which were legacy media companies, right? And if you look back further in the history of entertainment in India, there is enough and more example कि when pre 1990s we had Doordarshan,
Hmm.
right? In 1990s, satellite happened. For the
Right.
first 6 7 years, we actually consumed American television, right? You grew up watching Bold and the Beautiful and Santa Barbara and Beverly Hills, etc., right? It took 5, 6, 7 years for the domestic industry to come up, where a Z came out, a SL came out, a Balaji came out, where content for Indian masses started
Hmm.
being produced, like Hum Panch and all those kind of, then Balaji came out with the K series of
Hmm.
dramas, Kyuki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, much later on. But there were the earlier evolution of entertainment in India,
Hmm.
but it took time for the domestic industry. If we look at films also, it used to be individual independent producers and filmmakers putting together money until the Viacom, Sonys, etc. of the world started coming and actually building proper
Right.
shops. So then the
Right.
likes of the Yash Raj, etc., which became much more institutional, which then started, building these more kind of platforms to start funding content creation, right? That is the journey of which interactive media and entertainment in India is like, right? The first, mobile has happened. The first kind of content that we've been consuming are foreign platforms, the tech platforms, the big tech platforms, right? Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. The for Earlier there used to be TikTok, right? But now, if and even in games, we consume a lot of foreign published content like Krafton, like we BGMI or Free Fire or Clash of Clans. We are in that first 4, 5 years in that journey where it is taking time for the Indian industry to come about. But
Hmm.
that as a fund is where we exist, because we invest at the very first stage. We invested founders at pre-seed, where the pre-revenue companies, where they come to us with just sometimes even presentations where it's a team of very gifted founders with very large visions, very bold visions, who want to build companies from India, or they want to build companies for India, right?
Hmm.
In fact, both. So I think it is first is that the opportunity needs to be exist, then the infrastructure needs to come together, and then capital providers need to come together, and then the regulators catch up,
Hmm.
right? And that's essentially that journey of what that market looks like, and we're in that bang in the middle of that journey for at least interactive entertainment and gaming in India.
Saloni, give us few examples because you are very much in this ecosystem, which are interesting in terms of which are really doing great on a global scale.
Yeah, sure. Most of our bets are very unconventional, right? Our
Tell
theory is,
tell about some of your portfolio companies who are doing very well.
yeah, so, for us, we've always invested when we see trends that we think are early,
Hmm.
uh, and we see, I like to say that it's better to be early in the market, but not the only, right? If you're
Right.
early, you'll catch the alphas and the catch, because
Hmm.
returns in venture comes from outliers. If everyone is agreeing and seeing something, it's
You will
already,
have more time to
or
reap
it's
the
already,
effort and yeah.
yeah. So, for example, we believed in live social entertainment, which we believe would be monetized by virtual gifting and tipping.
Hmm.
And we backed a company called Ilo. It's
Hmm.
now raised as Series B. It's a 3-year-old business. It's on a $23 million run rate. It's completely monetized via in-app gifting and purchasing. Got 100 million users on its platform. It runs 150,000 live streams a day, which are everything from player knockout battles to live singing to formats which used to be very popular on audio chats, which used to be very popular on television, but they're actually now a creator-led live streaming platform, right? We believed in midco games for India, and we believed that monetization would happen through in-app purchases. So we backed a company called Studio Sira, we backed a company called Mayhem, we backed a company called Def Touch, which is now India's second most popular cricket game for the
Hmm.
India market. It's called Kings of Cricket, right? We believed that enterprise virtual reality would take off far faster than consumer virtual reality adoption. And we backed a company called Autoverse, which is actually India's fastest growing VR business. And they are actually servicing and they're building a SaaS product for global life sciences, pharmaceutical companies, heavy industries, where they're doing industrial worker safety training, but they also have a VR game, which they're building, which
Right.
is just about launching. So for us, we believe that the category leaders in the next 5, 7 years need to be funded today
Right.
by a fund
Right.
like us. And
Right.
this is exactly the kind of businesses that we're backing today.
And do you feel that somewhere all these companies would have a very large market outside India also, right?
Yes. But
And
India in itself is a market for many of them. India is a
uh,
market for many of them, but for many of them, yes, they're looking at global markets That's
And,
right.
and that's where we will really really become big as a industry when we start having lot of users from Middle East and from MENA regions and from America. And so, do these companies also need to expand globally and have their presence there? What is your view, or you feel that the cap table is still can be in India? Doesn't matter. They can have subsidiaries in these countries.
I think there is we're increasingly seeing the likes of Indian companies go global, right? Where they started off in India, but they eventually went global, right?
Mhm.
You see companies like a Pocket FM started in India,
Mhm.
but obviously scaling very well in the global markets.
Right.
That's a example of a content business that started in India, right? But at the same time, we have a business called Ilo, which is India only, and the revenue is coming from India. They
Mm.
have ambitions to expand to other markets like MENA, etc., where there's Indian diaspora. So of course, but that has to be a kind of a structured approach, because when a
Mm.
company starts, they have less resources, they have less bandwidth, they have less capital, so they have to obviously pick a geography. We've also seen examples of companies like a Skillmatics or a Ultra Human, or a Boat, who have built large formidable brands
Right.
and companies for the global markets. But you at the same time have a Mama Earth, which has been started building a big enough business in India before expanding to the global markets, right? So I think it is a matter of evolution
Right.
for companies. And of course, if for Indian companies, the challenge is far harder, I'd say, especially for tech businesses, because at the same time, you are competing with global tech, right?
Mm.
Like China, which had a walled garden where there was no Facebook, there was no Amazon, there was no Instagram. You
Mm.
those domestic companies which had enough time to be able to build for and enough
Monetize. Yeah.
and monetize that, right? In India, an Indian founder is not only competing with big tech, but they're also kind of competing with the customer expectation of what a evolved product should look like,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, so it's not about the Indian customer will not pay. The problem is the Indian customer is very discerning.
Mm.
They're very value sensitive, actually.
Right.
So you
Right.
have to provide them a world-class experience, but at a seed stage budget. How do you do
Right. So how are and this is very interesting, and how are the startups coping up with this, right? Because from day one, and you rightly said from a day one, someone want to have an experience of Instagram, but then you are comparing with a startup which is at just at a seed stage, right? And then they have that aspiration to go global and compete with Instagram in US, not only in India. Now,
that?
how do you do that? So
It's
that's
hard. It's
yeah.
hard. It's incredibly hard, but that's why Indian companies are far more resilient,
Hmm.
right? And there is a um, lot more resilience, lot more grit that you see in Indian companies and Indian startups, and a lot of people forget that Indian startups and operate in a market with very unique challenges,
Hmm.
and they are competing against companies with very mature ecosystems and very mature funding sources, right? So I think as an ecosystem we have to be kinder to Indian startups, because they're so early in their journey. There's a lot of pressure. There is consumer pressure at the same time, but we're not a closed walled internet
Right. Right.
economy, right? And that I think is a very um, unique, I guess, challenge, but also an opportunity for some of the most resilient founders, right? Also, Indian companies often face challenges like limited access to experienced talent. There is infrastructure constraint. There are regulatory hurdles. There is often a need to educate investors
Hmm.
about various sectors as well. So this, I think, it's a double-edged sword. It fosters innovation, but it also is harder, but it also builds resilience in a way.
And I know I don't think we celebrate founders enough. We just celebrate few founders who come in the news when they raise capital, and there are at least 10x or 20x of such founders who are actually silently building something and doing great for the country. I Even though I know there are a lot of negative things in the ecosystem, and
Sure.
there are people who are doing stuff which actually hurts our ecosystem, right? But I will not touch upon that because I want to celebrate and actually see founders who are doing very well and silently building. But there is one core area I want to touch upon, and which is very, very interesting, is that how do you, what is your message to founders when, because building a business is like a marathon, right?
Yeah.
It's been 15 years for me, and I still feel that I have just started, right?
Mhm.
And initially, we were competing with small firms. Now we compete with big fours. And you
Hmm.
rightly said that, interestingly, in accounting,
Hmm.
since 1991, all the big fours are in India. In fact, now Big 10, Big 20s are in India. And I was in London and I was talking to them, and a lawyer told me that we can't still enter India because foreign lawyers are not still allowed in
Well,
India.
no, no longer. Now they can. So I think
Now they
now,
can, but
yeah,
still, it's some time it will take.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what's your message? Because many people, many founders I see, they kind of get distracted after 3, 4 years, and
Hmm.
they start to build large business. They
Hmm.
start to build a very, and they are ready to walk the long road. And
Hmm.
after 3, 4 years, with what's happening around them, they start thinking about exit and somehow do something and exit, right? What's your message to them?
I feel like these kind of businesses exist everywhere, right? Like if you look at there's in the global markets, there was FTX, there was Theranos, there was Wirecard in Germany. I and of course in India we've got the likes of the Blue Smarts, the Gensol crisis, the Byju's, which have been in the news, etc. But if you look at the proportion of this vis-a-vis the proportion of businesses that are getting funded, it would, in absolute numbers, it's still very small.
Very
Right.
small.
And in most cases, founders are trying to do the best that they can to stay afloat and to try and build
No,
valuable.
you are a great messenger. You are helping businesses. You are helping businesses in gaming and media tech, which is very rare. I think you are one of the only fund which is dedicatedly investing into this sector. So someone like you, if you are saying to founders that please hang in and please continue to build, because there is good which is coming in at the end of the tunnel, right? There is a light at the end of the tunnel. So I think from that perspective, I wanted you to give that message, um, because there are negative things. We don't even want to talk about that negative things. I from the finance field, and at times I completely get amazed in terms of how people do this stuff in the daylight when they have all the affirmative rights, and there are big four auditors, and I don't know how that happens, but largely, what is your message for founders to build? And everyone, I was talking to Sanjeev some time back, and he said that if you are lucky, then you will build something in 2025 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, you have to, as a founder, I think my message would be, get comfortable with failure and rejection.
right.
It's really brutal. The
Hmm,
mental toll is real. You will fail more than you will succeed. There will be many detractors. You
right.
will realize many times that passion is not enough. There is timing, there is market readiness, there are execution, which are equally critical. So you will have to learn to pivot. You'll have to learn to adapt without losing sight of the core vision. Continuous learning is very important. Keeping yourself abreast with emerging trends, especially now, especially with the advent of AI, it's becoming even more important. But I think most importantly, I would say is if you're a founder, get really comfortable with discomfort and pain and
Right.
ambiguity.
Right.
Because those are the folks who will build lasting companies, because there are many times where you will want to give up.
Hmm.
Then there are more times when you will want to give up than to stay on. And but if you have that grit and that determination and that resilience, you will make it through, right? And I think, we had SS Rajamouli sir come to our LP summit last year,
Hmm.
and he said, passion is important, but there are people who need to tolerate your passion for long enough to let
Right.
you succeed.
Right.
And that is also something that you need to do. So if you are going to, let's say, go down the path of raising money
Hmm.
and having investors, then have investors who are in it for the long run
I
with
was
you.
about to come to this because investors need to have that presence of time and that mindset that I am invested in this company for long,
Yeah.
and that's where someone like you who is coming in at such a early stage, right?
Yeah.
you are actually taking the largest bet and largest risk at that. From that perspective, you are investing in startup. You said that you have many times invested in a startup wherein they don't even have revenue, they don't even have the right business model, they don't have the market fit, and you just invest, right? And I was just talking to someone, and the gentleman told me that the only success is the only way you can succeed is if you can survive.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a marathon. The
Yeah.
person who is able to survive the last and is able to complete the race is the winner, right? So many entrepreneurs, they don't, they have to understand that it's about survival and then going to the next level, survival and going to the next level. And I think that is very, very important. Um, Saloni, any last thing which you want to discuss or talk about? Anything which you felt that you want to talk about your fund? What is the future of your fund? You're raising more capital. I understand you are also investing in cross-border startups also, I think.
That's right. Yes.
So would love to know more about that.
Yeah, we're a 5-year-old fund now, and the aim here is to, we have an institutional fund. It's a multi-fund franchise. Our investors are largely global, and majority of our capital actually comes from strategic corporates and institutions. So from Japan, from South Korea, from US and Europe. I think more importantly, as a fund, we're startup-like in terms of just hunger, agility, speed, and temperament, but we're very institutional when it comes to operations, fund finance, investor
Right.
reporting, and best practices, right? We're ultimately we're regulated across multiple jurisdictions, and several of our LPs are listed corporates. So
Right.
the fiduciary responsibility is very high.
Mm,
But ultimately, as a fund, the intention here is for us to, let's say, how do we catalyze the next generation of interactive media companies in India, right? How do we pioneer a new asset class?
mm,
And then how do we deliver outlier returns, right? Ultimately, that is the goal here. But I'd say we're not just here to find and fund companies. We're here to build an ecosystem in an industry. That is very important for us as a fund, right? And we have nearly 100% coverage of the market,
mm,
right? So our ability to separate signal from the noise is fairly high. There's very little that we miss or
mm,
we don't see in the ecosystem. And additionally, as a fund, we're a very, very small team, but
mm.
with a very large mandate in terms of navigating this market. So I think our thesis is always to be early, to be very patient, and to kind of do what is right by our founders and our investors. We see venture capital as a services industry where you have two main stakeholders to service. One, you've got LPs, and one, you've got founders. And ultimately, if you do both well, you are able to do what you set out to do, and that would be our ultimate purpose.
I've spoken to so many founders and so many investors, Saloni, but the kind of vision and the kind of clarity which you have, I mean, and I could sense the vision which is there in your eyes when you say that you want to create an industry, you want to create an ecosystem, you want to help the next set of industry leaders from India. And you said something that you're not building for the world, you're building for India, right?
Hmm.
You're not building from India, but you're building for India, right? And I think that is very, very commendable. And I think all kudos goes to you and your team.
Thank
And,
you.
and in the last 5 years, because I could see your front everywhere in the last 5 years, and the way you guys have scaled up, rightly as a startup and doing so well. So all the best to you, all the best to your fund. And I
Thank
know that you will actually do what you set out to do. And one last thing, which I've never heard from any investor. You
you.
said that you are a service fund or you're a service company, and on the one side you have LPs, and on the other side you have founders. That itself, as a mantra which you have, is just amazing. So thanks for that,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for joining us. I think I really love the insights, and I love in terms of what's happening in the media tech and gaming industry. We always felt gaming from a very narrow. We always look gaming industry from a very narrow lens, but today I understood about so many new startups, the areas, and what's happening. And from my experience, I've learned a lot today. And I think when this podcast will go live on YouTube, and I think many people would know about what you guys are doing. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for that, and thanks for building it in India and helping Indian gaming industry and media tech industry to really support and take them to the next level. Thanks for this once again. All the
Thanks.
best to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.